Imagine being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night, handcuffed by strangers, and sent to a place where you don't know if you'll survive the next day. That's what happens to teenagers like Sophie and Danny. Welcome to the terrifying world of the boot camp. Since the 1970s, tough love rehabilitation camps have been on the rise, with over 200 facilities worldwide. These camps promise to fix troubled teens but operate without regulation, leaving thousands of young lives destroyed. Many kids sent there are forced to attend, and some never return. This is where our story begins. Danny is fast asleep when two men burst into his room, handcuffing him before he can react. As he's dragged outside, he sees his parents watching. Desperate, he calls out to them, but his mom just tells him, "It's for your own good." Sophie, on the other hand, doesn't get much warning either. She had just pulled a prank at the store where her boyfriend Ben works, and everything seemed fine. But later that night, men arrive with permission from her parents to take her away. Her cries for help are met with silence as she's sedated and carried off. Sophie wakes up on a boat. She's disoriented, and the sight of two familiar faces doesn't bring comfort. Danny's there trying to figure things out, and another kid, Jack, is throwing up into the ocean. None of them knows where they're being taken, but eventually they land on an island far away from home. As the teens are marched into the woods, they're introduced to the brutal rules of the camp. Arthur, the camp director, and his second-in-command, Logan, are in charge. To drive their authority home, the three teens are chained to concrete blocks on the shore as freezing waves hit them over and over again. The cold bites through their skin, and they're forced to huddle together for warmth, holding hands to get through the night. The next morning, they're unchained and given a taste of life at camp. They're stripped of their personal belongings, and everyone starts at the bottom as a black shirt. The goal is to work your way up through obedience, gaining privileges like better food and less grueling tasks. But if you step out of line, you get punished harshly. The camp operates on humiliation and fear. Every day, the teens have to participate in a circle of shame where one kid is singled out for public abuse. They're forced to admit their wrongdoings, whether real or imagined, and get torn apart by the rest of the campers. Sophie witnesses this firsthand when Trina, a fellow camper, is humiliated in front of everyone, forced to confess to things that might not even be true. Sophie immediately clashes with Arthur's authority. She isn't easily broken, but her willpower doesn't sit well with the camp staff. Jack's the first to get into trouble, mouthing off to Arthur and paying the price with a cane to the foot. Meanwhile, Sophie starts seeing just how far the camp is willing to go to control them. The longer Sophie stays at the camp, the more she sees. It's not just the physical punishments, there's something darker happening behind the scenes. Logan, the head of security, takes advantage of his power, particularly with the female campers. One night, Sophie sees him cornering Trina and realizes just how deep the corruption runs. But by this point, many of the teens have been brainwashed into believing they deserve this treatment. Sophie's only hope for escape is Ben. Back home, Ben is trying everything he can to figure out where Sophie was taken. After talking to her mother, he learns that she's been sent to the infamous Serenity boot camp, and he's determined to get her out. He even stages his own breakdown, using fake drugs to get himself sent to the camp. Once he's there, Sophie is shocked to see him but relieved that she's not alone anymore. Together, they start planning their escape. Ben uses a fork to tamper with the sensors on their ankles, figuring out a way to deactivate them. They know they have to act fast before Arthur and Logan catch on. At the same time, Sophie is still battling the psychological effects of the camp. She's starting to doubt herself, wondering if maybe she does deserve to be there. This is the final straw for Ben and Sophie. They know they have to get out, or they might be next. Late one night, after disabling their sensors, they make a break for it. They manage to reach the shore and steal a boat, but the ocean isn't kind. The waves are rough, and they're barely able to stay afloat. Eventually, they make it to a nearby island resort, where Ben had stashed money and documents for their getaway. For a brief moment, they taste freedom. They have food, warmth, and for the first time in weeks, they feel safe. But their peace is short-lived. Logan and his men find them and drag them back to the camp. Sophie and Ben are thrown into the pit cells, where they're left to bake in the sun and endure cold rains for days. One day, during a brutal swim session, Danny, the boy who was taken away in the middle of the night, just like Sophie, starts drowning. The camp staff does nothing to help him, watching as he struggles. Ben can't take it anymore and jumps in to save him, but by the time he reaches Danny, it's too late. Danny dies in Ben's arms, and the camp covers it up, claiming Danny was trying to escape. When they're finally let out, Arthur tries to break Ben's spirit, telling him he'll be kicked out of the camp in a few days and that Sophie will pay the price if he steps out of line. But Ben isn't broken. Instead, he rallies the other campers, telling them about Danny's death and the corruption at the camp. In the final confrontation, the campers revolt. Armed with sticks in their anger, they turn on Logan and Arthur. Sophie leads the charge, calling out the abuses she's witnessed, but stops short of letting the violence get out of control. Arthur tries to regain control by blaming their parents, but Ben exposes him, revealing that Arthur had moved his camp after kids died at his previous location. The revolt escalates. Tents are set on fire, and the camp descends into chaos. Logan tries to escape in a car, but the campers force him into a building that's already ablaze, and an explosion seals his fate. Arthur is captured and thrown into a pit, left for the authorities to find. As the camp burns around them, the teens finally feel the weight of their chains lifted. They've won their freedom, but the scars of their time at boot camp will stay with them forever. And that's the story of boot camp, where rehabilitation turned into a nightmare. Do you think Sophie and Ben will ever truly recover from what they went through? And what about the camps that still exist today? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next movie recap is going to be wild.